So I'm going to give you the short version of the discovery that I made. And this is serious stuff, but it's also kind of fascinating. Uh, and where it's going to leave us, if you follow me in my thinking, it's going to leave us in a spot where we're going to need to look at the implications, um, and we'll do that together. So let me switch my tab over to the story. Wow, that worked. I didn't know you could do that. Okay, let me just see if I can get this out of the way. Yeah, I can. Good, 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 good. So, I'll just read what I wrote here for a sec, but I'm not going to go over the whole story. The story of Adam and Eve and what happened in the Garden of Eden has some bizarre aspects to it, which seem to have been completely overlooked by the mainstream. Here's the entire story followed by my analysis. Yeah, that was pretty conservatively written. I would say right now I've got a I've got a bombshell. I know you're not that excited. No matter what it is, no matter what I've figured out in the Bible, you're not going to be that excited about it because it's just the Bible. But if I could show you that the Bible, I mean, because this is what I believe, if I could get you to believe this, um, we'd be making progress. And that is that this book seems to have been written not only to record what happened in those days, but also to become sort of have a embedded coded message in it that would only be recognized at some point when man had become technological. This is why I use the term 21st century eyes. When we have 21st century eyes, what we have is we have an understanding of technology. And suddenly, when we read the Bible, oh, I just realized I'm on the wrong track, right? We're not going to talk about technology this time because this is Adam and Eve. What we're going to talk about here is what happened, and then we're going to flip the story because the public says that, I mean, contemporary Christianity says that if they talk about this at all, which they're afraid to, because if they talk about Adam and Eve, they might lose their audience like I have. I have. Jolie says, stick with the current events, right? And sure, but I'm not a current events guru. I'm going to have to become one because I love current events. But I've got a deep history in UFOs, and I've watched everything that's ever come out about UFOs, and I have a lot of thoughts about that, and I'll share those with you in the future. And I want to hear yours too. And if you think I'm off completely on this story, let me know. But fair warning, I've spent 3 years on and off thinking about this story for some reason, obsessed with it until I could fully understand it. Tell me if you think I do fully understand it now, and tell me if you have a new understanding of it, okay? So, we all know the story, but I'm going to summarize it here for you. God creates man and then puts him in this Garden of Eden, which has many fruit trees all over it, but in the middle are 2 trees which seem to be for God only. One is specifically called out as the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and that's the one that had the forbidden fruit, as you all know what that is. And the other tree was the tree of life, and I don't know if it was just sloppiness, but there was no restriction or mentioned about the tree of life, although they never did partake of it, because if they had, they would have lived forever. That's according to the narrator himself, right? Whoever wrote this story. And it certainly wasn't Moses, because Moses wasn't there. So whoever wrote the story was probably covering it the way it really happened, because it was someone in the know. But we don't know who that is. But one thing we can say is that, and this is really the critical point here, we've all been taught in Sunday school or word of mouth that we did the wrong thing in the garden, that we sinned by disobeying God. And because of that sin, we are now in a fallen state, and we need someone like Jesus to save us from our fallen state and reconcile us to God. I know that sounds ridiculous, but and if it doesn't, it should. But that's what we were taught, was that the serpent came in and lied to Eve. They said he was a liar. In fact, a lot of times they'll quote Jesus from the New Testament when he was angry about something, and he said, yeah, just like that Satan, who's been a liar since the very beginning, the father of lies. So, a lot of people think he's looking back at the Garden of Eden, but that's not where Satan wasn't there. Satan was a watcher. He was one of the angels who was assigned to watch over us. So this was not Satan here, but this serpent was, in the story, was probably an actor. I'll explain why. But we've been told that the serpent lied to us, and that's what got us in trouble. And that's it. I'm going to tell you that, no, the serpent doesn't appear to have lied at all. Sorry. I'm not here to defend bad things. But the serpent didn't lie in this story. God lied. Yeah, he did. First lie was when he told him it was poison. Well, he didn't use that word right. He said, in the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. So that sounds a lot like poison. Except it was a very beautiful poison. It was just making sure I had the right shirt on. All right. So, where was I? So I'm telling you that by the time we're done with this story, I think you might believe me that it looks like the one who lied here was God. Maybe not in a malicious way, but that's up to you to judge and me to judge. My own judgment of it, I'm kind of withholding. Am I pissed that we were lied to? Well, only in the sense that right now being lied to is a big issue because there's never been so much lying going on as there is today, which is to be expected because we have more communication channels, right? And because morality has left the building, just basic, morality in terms of not lying, that's kind of gone out the window. I know that my brothers and sisters are still good people, but the leaders are stepping up their lying campaigns. So, Does it anger me that we got lied to in the Bible by God? Yeah, it kind of does, but only when I mix it with a bunch of other things that I'm angry with, and then yeah, it does. All right, so enough. Let me try to make my case real quick here, and I'll tell you the moment where I thought that there was something strange. The first thing I thought was that Eve did not believe what God said. He said it was poison, essentially. Now, if she believed God, then she wouldn't have eaten it, would she? Just let that sink in for a sec. If she really thought it was poison, do you think she would eat it? No. Why didn't she think it was poison then, Lair? Well, because the serpent told her something that sounded a lot more plausible. Because remember, even though the King's English doesn't make it real obvious, and even though this Bible is not the only bit of Hebrew text written on this story, there is another source, Hebrew source, which has more information about the story. And that's the first book of Adam and Eve and the second book of Adam and Eve. But those are from the oral tradition. But in there, we learn that not only were these trees in the midst, meaning the middle of the garden, these two forbidden trees, or at least one was forbidden and one was not even talked about until the end of the story. But these two trees were in the middle of the garden, and God used to come down at that spot in the middle of the garden. Okay, so what did the serpent say? The way he broached the conversation was by saying, "Hey, so did God say you're like not to eat from any of these trees?" Oh, she says, "We're allowed to eat from all of them except one, this one. But if we eat from that one," he said, "we'll surely die." And the serpent replied that you shall not surely die. So right there, he's saying God's lying to you. God does know that in the day that you eat thereof, you will become as one of him, knowing good and evil. You will become as gods, knowing good and evil. Eve made a calculation. Which one is telling the truth here? And she looked at the fruit. It was beautiful. She knows that it was his fruit. She knows that he's supposedly her father. So it probably isn't poison. And the serpent is acting like my friend, whereas God is acting more like my parent. My friend is telling me that God's lying to me, and I think he is. So she took. And did she die? No, she did not die. So was God lying? Looks that way. Looks that way. Well, what about, well, no, I thought the serpent was the one who lied. That's what we were all told. But if you look at the story, what did the serpent say? You will not die. They didn't die. Well, 930 years later, yes, they died. But they didn't die that day. So you can't really say that, oh, well, they did die, didn't they? So he was right. Yeah, 930 years later. So, sorry, that's not an explanation. That's not a loophole to get away from the lie. I'm not as angry about this as you think, because when we get to the end and we find out what the lie was and what, I mean, we've already hit one of them, right? That it was poison. That's a lie. But there's more. And the one that, the other lie that comes at the end of the story is the one that really opens our eyes. So stay tuned. So they take the fruit, they eat of it, and in fact, what happens is exactly what the serpent said. And let me show you what the narrator says. This is all the story of the serpent, and that's the whole story right there. I color coded it so you could see who's talking. Here's the narrator. And the eyes of them both were opened. That's what the serpent said right up here. You shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. The implication here is that God doesn't want his children to know good and evil. He doesn't want his children to be like him. And he doesn't want their eyes to be opened. Yeah, I know what you're all thinking. I'm thinking the same thing. Well, what do you mean? They had their eyes closed for most of their lives until that point? Their eyes were closed? We don't have enough time to go into that, but there's an explanation from the first book of Adam and Eve that, just real quickly, that they actually had a different kind of vision at first. Their natures were different. And that when they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, their natures became more flesh-like and less light-like. And they relied on their eyes themselves now to see, instead of somehow seeing through their third eye, I guess. So yeah, it's a little messy, but basically everything the serpent said became true, and everything God said was a lie. If God wanted to tell the truth, what he would have said is that I don't want you taking from this tree here. This is mine. If I catch you taking from it, I'm going to kick you out of the garden. Life is going to be hard out there, so just don't do it. That would have been the fair, honest thing, because that's what he did. But before you get angry, just hold your horses for a sec, because it's not as bad as we might think it is right now. It is a little irritating to think that he didn't want us to become wise like him. What parent wouldn't want that? Okay, granted, there are considerations, right? Like if I've never been a parent, but I understand that you want your children to grow up slowly so that you can enjoy them before they become adults, and you don't want them to be tarnished by the weight of the world, but that happens. And you could say that, oh, maybe God just wanted him to remain like a little child so that he could enjoy him. No. I'm going to tell you what I think the truth is. I'm telling you that I think the truth is he wanted them to take from that tree against his wishes. Why? Because then he had a chance, an excuse to kick them out based on that. I mean, think of it. You're starting a new race. You've created the man and the woman. They have the capability of making children, reproducing, because they are not immortal, like the Elohim are. They're immortal, so they don't need sex, and they're not given sex. They don't have sex. But they got jealous of us because we have it. That's another story. And finally, looking at that last highlighted verse on the page, behold, God says, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. Well, isn't that just exactly what the serpent said would happen? Except in this stupid story, the only evil that they seemed to know was that they were naked. My goodness. That is not very evil. So it's a stupid story in so many ways. And, you know, why did I spend so much damn time on this? Well, because I wanted to know what it was trying to say. It's the very first damn story in the Bible. And it's the basis for original sin, all that crap. And they, no, I shouldn't be mean, but I was going to say, and they, meaning everyone that came before this generation, believed one thing about the story, and now we're going to have to switch gears and believe something else, which is a lot more palatable, which makes a lot more sense. But what is it? I'll tell you what it is. You're starting a new race. You've got your man and woman who are able to procreate, and you've got them in a beautiful womb. Not room, womb. Yes, the Garden of Eden was a womb. And it was not a place that would be able to, contain the hundreds of children that were going to start coming into the world through Adam and Eve. They lived 930 years and had children all along that time that aren't even mentioned hardly. I'm not supposed to do that. Jolie told me. It's probably a good idea. All right, so now not only do we seem to see here that in the story as written, face value, the one who lied was God. Okay? Just face value of the story. I'm not trying to I'm not even going to pander to those little coaxes that come from the peanut gallery that say things like, wow, there you're calling God evil, huh? You're saying God's a liar and the devil's the one who tells the truth? No, I'm not saying that. First of all, this is not the devil here. This is the serpent. Okay? When they read this, before the New Testament was ever occurred, before Jesus came, this is all we had. And there is no connection between the serpent and Satan. As a matter of fact, Satan is only mentioned once in the entire Old Testament. So we're not talking about, suddenly we realize that God is bad and the devil is good. No, that's not where I'm going, okay? I wouldn't be comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with a liar. And Jesus said that the devil is a liar and has been since the beginning. So I don't know what beginning he's talking about, but it wasn't here. I like people who tell the truth, and I fucking hate liars. So, and I'm not saying I hate God because of this, because we haven't finished the story yet. And when we finish it, then I don't think you're going to be pissed, and I'm not going to be pissed. We're just going to go, wow. All right. So now that he has made them feel that they have disobeyed him, he's going to delve out his punishments. The first punishment was to the serpent. I'm not going to scroll down to that right now. But for the serpent, his punishment was that he should lose his legs and that he'll become a snake, right? On your belly you shall go. And then the punishment for Eve, well, let me save that one because that's really the key that gets us to the truth here. Let's go to the punishment of Adam. Do you remember what it was? It was that he's going to curse the ground on the entire earth, God is, because of what Adam did. He's going to curse the ground so that it's really curmudgeonly about providing food for us, so that it's going to be really hard to extract our food. But that's what we get for disobeying God. Okay, farming is going to be hard. Basically, that's his punishment. Okay, does that sound plausible to you that God would curse the earth based on that? Just asking. Let's move on to the key here, Eve's punishment. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. So this means pain in childbirth, and if you're not able to translate that King James English, sorrow is pain. So what he's saying is that he will greatly multiply the pain that she will have bringing forth children. Multiply like by what? It seems to be saying that you always would have had some pain, but I'm going to greatly multiply that pain. And that's going to be your punishment. Okay, at this point, really, an honest reader should sort of pause and ask themselves, what connection is in God's mind that makes childbirth somehow relate to a good punishment? How do these two things come together? That, for your punishment, what I've decided is that I'm going to make it extremely painful for you to have children. Like greatly, much more than it was normally, I guess, right? You can't multiply zero, so there must have been some amount of pain that was already there, but that was a normal and acceptable level as what we see in the animals kingdom, right? They don't seem to be in anywhere near as much distress as humans do. But where in the world is God coming from when he says that he's going to make her childbirth and all women to come much more painful because of her disobeyal? Okay, that's the lie. It's, first of all, it is complete non sequitur. I know if you haven't read the whole Bible, you might be asking yourself, well, maybe there's, some other part of the Bible that kind of shows how these two things, pain in childbirth and a desire to lay a punishment upon a person, like a woman, maybe somehow those are connected somewhere else in the Bible. No, they're not. Sorry. So it's just as weird as it sounds like it is. It really is that weird. And that was the thing that really woke me up here, and I realized there's something fishy about this story. And I've actually come to the conclusion, before I tell you what the conclusion is, I've got to give you the key. The key to this story is in red right here. I mean, yellow. Okay, I'm not going to read it, but you can feel free to read it and ignore my voice. Because I know you can't do both. You can't both read and listen to me if I'm not going to read the exact same thing. But I'm not. Because I'm just going to give it to you the way I remember it. Essentially, scratch essentially. Start over again. Okay, here's what happened. I believe in the ancient alien theory that the Elohim are an extraterrestrial race, and they look like us, and they came down about 6,000 years ago, according to the Jewish calendar, created a man by mixing their genes with the existing primates, and that became the missing link, right? A lot of us, are in on that. A lot of us believe that, and it makes sense, and certainly that's where I'm at. So in this process of genetically engineering the man, there were many attempts, according to the Sumerian literature. But they finally got it right, they thought, and they felt. But one of the things that they did was they increased the size of our brains by mixing their genes with us. So we had bigger heads as babies, and a bigger head coming out of a normal-sized womb would cause a lot of pain. You get where I'm going, right? Now, you might ask yourself, as I did for a couple of years, well, if they were genetic engineers and they're very good at their craft, why didn't they compensate if the heads are going to be larger, then the womb has to be larger so that she isn't in agony giving birth to children? Then I found out from Michio Kaku, the famous physicist, that the womb can't be any larger than it is right now because it would impede being able to walk upright. The physics of it just won't work. The womb is already as large as it can be. The head is now larger because of the influx of the Elohim genes, and therefore childbirth is going to be a real bitch for most women. And we know that it is. Not for everyone, but for most women, it's pretty traumatic. Very painful. Now, if you were Eve and you looked at the animals having babies without even screaming or anything like that, you would kind of ask yourself, why does it hurt so much when I have a child? Well, God's giving her an answer to that. Oh, it's because I'm punishing you. That's what he said, right? That's what he said. That's her punishment. Increased pain in childbirth. But in fact, it wasn't a punishment. It was a consequence of their genetic engineering. So, let's go back to Adam's punishment. Do you think that was real? Because I'm saying Eve's punishment wasn't a punishment. It was part of the genetic engineering. He's pretending that he's punishing her, but he's really not. But he's also giving her an explanation for why her childbearing is going to hurt. Go back to Adam's punishment. Cursed the ground so that it would be really hard to farm. No, I don't think God would do that. He made a beautiful creation, and he's not going to curse the ground. We're not the only living things on the ground. So it wasn't a punishment. It was a prediction of what life was going to be like when they started migrating down those 4 rivers that came out of Eden and multiplying and farming. It's going to be hard. That's what God was saying. And just remember that the reason it's hard is because I'm punishing you for disobeying me. So he wanted them both to go out with a sense that they had done wrong and that they're being punished. But they really weren't, were they? And on top of that, they didn't even disobey him until he sent the serpent in. And yes, I'm saying he sent the serpent in. It's not like he walked away and just let somebody come in and throw off his whole fucking plan. Of course not. So, now why would he go to all this, pretending? I think there's a good reason for that. And I think that it is that he would never get them to leave the damn house. Right? When your kids are 18, most parents I've been hearing say they hope their children will get the hell out because that's been 18 years and they need a rest. Well, it isn't exactly like that here, but it's similar because he needed a way to get them to live in the normal world after they were ready, after they had spent enough time in the womb that was Eden to get ready, and then they had maybe their first sex. Maybe that's what eating the fruit did for them. But that was a signal that everything was ready to proceed. So yeah, he really did want them to take the fruit because that would be his excuse to push them out. And did the fruit kill them? Of course not. That was a lie. Did it make them like gods, knowing good and evil? I don't know. I don't think so. But I can tell you what does bring us the knowledge of good and evil. It's not being coddled all your life, not being a rich kid with a silver spoon, not, most of us go through the traumas of this life and we come out better people, but it really sucks to go through it. But now we have the knowledge of what is good and what is evil. Right? We know what's good, what promotes love and peace and happiness, and we know what does the opposite, what destroys, what creates and destroys love, and everything else. So now they have the knowledge of good and evil if they live in this world. So it's almost like, okay, they made the choice, a choice that he was, I think, very proud of. It shows they had free will. It shows that they could reason things out and think, and that's what he was looking for. She did the right thing. But does that mean disobeying God is always the right thing? No. But when we talk about obeying God, if that's a good thing, there's only one way, a very narrow way that I might define that as a good thing. Not this God, okay? Not this God here. I continually forget to come back to full screen, so I end up being in the corner. And I want to kind of come out. So here I am coming out. Hello. So what we have here is a story which has been, you could say, misinterpreted for a long time, 2,000 years. And the interpretation, which was wrong, was that we had done something terrible by disobeying God about that tree in the middle. That was a lie. We didn't do anything terrible. We did exactly what he wanted us to do. And we asked for knowledge. And so we are getting it. Not from that apple or whatever it was, but from living a life of hard knocks. That's how we get wise. And do you think he's proud of us? That we have taken so many hits on the chin from this life. Our own fault, our own sins, other people's faults, other people's sins affecting us. It is a difficult world. But I can tell you one thing. I'm not that little boy who put a firecracker in a frog because I was so obsessed with fireworks and how cool they were, and I wanted to see what I could blow up. And I don't know if it was my idea, but I ended up putting a firecracker in a frog and lighting the fuse to watch him blow up. And that saddens me because all life is a miracle. And, well, except for fucking mosquitoes and stuff like that, it's not a fucking miracle at all. But anyway, you know, I would be ashamed to be that boy, and I'm not that boy anymore. You know why? Because I've had some shit done to me. So now I know that it's good to consider the comfort of everyone you're around and not hurt them. That's knowledge. That's knowledge of good and evil. And that's just one tiny sliver. So what I'm trying to say is we go through life. It sucks. I'm proud of us for not yelling it sucks all the time, even though it does. I'm proud of us humans, for working as hard as we have. We've all worked our fucking tails off. And on top of that, we've been given lies and disinformation and, you know, so many things wrong from our government I'm talking about. But let me not digress too far because I want to wrap this up now. I'm going to close with this final paragraph, which is written fairly well, so I'll read it. The tree of life is mentioned only twice in our Bible. Once in Genesis, in the first book that's the first book of the Bible, where man begins acquiring the knowledge of good and evil, but is barred from the tree of life. And then again in Revelation, the last book of the Bible. So it's the tree of life is only talked about in the first book and the last book. In the first book, Genesis, it's taken away from us. And in the last book, Revelation, he's promising it back to us, the tree of life. As far as the tree of knowledge, we've already ate all the fruit, right? Because we have lived our lives here on earth. And then again in Revelation, the last book of the Bible, wherein the tree of life is promised back to us. Perhaps then it is as simple as this. Before we enter that mysterious kingdom of heaven, reportedly a most beautiful world in which there is no pain and great joy, it may be that God wants us to first learn a few things about how to behave. We do seem to learn those things by living here, and what we learn does benefit us. But I also think that in the world to come, through aspects of physics we are only beginning to become aware of, such as telepathy. We will benefit not only from our own experiences, but from the experiences of every human who has ever lived here since Adam and Eve. For if life after death is a fact, then not one of them has died. They are all waiting for us to join them. With that in mind, I say to you, my fellow human being, it may well be that we have a future so bright, we'll have to wear shades. I know most of us aren't sure about that, but I am. I'd stake my life on it. We have a bright future, believe me. I don't know if that bright future is going to be here on Earth. We may die before that happens, but the remarkable thing to think about is that we might not. It's kind of like being on Earth when the first man landed on the moon. There was only one generation that was on the Earth at that time. That was my generation, your generation, essentially. So we were the first ones to see man land on the moon. We are the first ones to see the truth about this story. And I said in the beginning that I would consider the implications of this story with you. I'm going to do that right now just by thinking about it for a second. And you think about it too, about what happened here. He lied to us, right? He had his reasons for that, and they weren't malicious reasons. But didn't really set a very good example, did he? I mean, if we're not supposed to lie, and we're not. I mean, you don't want to lie. Liars are the most repulsive thing to other humans because it's just a despicable thing to try to tell someone else something that's not true and give them a false sense of what's real. That's despicable because they will falter based on that information, that bad information. So it's not good to lie. Not to mention the anger that you'll get from the person you lied to. No, so we've been given some bad examples here from a God who was willing to lie to us, and that was his choice. I can't say it was good or bad because I'm not in the business of raising a whole race of beings that like he's doing, supposedly doing. It looks to me like he's just walked off and left us here to suffer and die, but you know that's not true. Okay, I'm going to cut it short here because this is probably already way too long, and I meant to give you a short video this time. So, have I completed all of my points? I think I have. Let me just run them down one by one. They weren't wrong to do what they did, but it did give him an excuse to kick them out of the garden. Okay, that's point one. Point two is that he did lie to them when he said that it was poison. It wasn't poison. Third, the serpent did not lie. I can't find any lying in the serpent, so he basically told them the truth. And the final lie was in God taking responsibility for the difficulties that she will have bearing children and that he will have bearing food or bringing food up from the ground, and that those two things are going to be painful and living in general is going to be painful, And he was giving his excuse for that by saying that that's all because you sinned. And I don't know why would you send someone out to think they did the wrong thing? Maybe this is based on maybe they thought that with a guilty conscience, man would try to behave himself better. Like I don't know. I'd like to know. Now, does this invalidate the Bible? No, of course not. First of all, man didn't write this story. This story was given to man because man wasn't around at the time that this particular event occurred. But when you read the rest of the Bible, or not, how many of you are really going to do that? But let me just tell you that I did, and I'm glad I did. If you have the time, do it. It's definitely worth it, especially with the ancient alien thing in mind. And I think you'll also see that it's much less just annoying than religion is. Religion is completely unhinged right now. It's becoming I'm actually enjoying it now because the pastors are just going crazy, right? And I saw one the other day, kicked up his leg, jumped from one side of the stage to the other behind the podium there with one of his legs kicked out at the same time, just expressing that on fire for God thing, Gotta love him. Gotta love him. So, the thing is, my friends, take my word for it. You're not alone. We've got some big, beautiful beings above us who care about us, hopefully. And you don't have to give up your belief in the Bible just because Jehovah lied to them. No. You just look at that for what it is. And I know you can do it. I'm doing it. I'm fine. I don't really like him. But, there's very good possibility that if I could be there at the time, maybe I would understand. So I'm not going to lay anger at, the whole concept of God just because our Bible contains a story wherein Jehovah lied to us. No. The Bible's a history book. And in my best judgment, it pretty much all happened the way it's written. So, that's it. Now, let me tell you something. I'm laughing because I don't want to cry. I put a lot of work into this, and it feels like I really did have a breakthrough, just kind of like the physicists are having, in their realm. And yet, when I posted this story, in my own Facebook group with 3,000 members, my Facebook group called Ancient Aliens in the Bible, I posted my first attempt at this explanation called Adam and Eve Decoded, not the short version. This is supposed to be the short version here, which I'm not sure it is. But not a single like even. Not a single like. So it looks like I'm failing fast here. So yeah, tonight was my attempt to make a small correction. I don't think I made it short enough though. But practice makes perfect. So you might be seeing another one of these. I'm not going to let this go until somebody goddamn replies and says, I think you're on the right track. Or I think you're a sinner who needs to repent. I don't care. Just give me something. Just tell me you listened to it. And then tell me that it has some fucking sense. Because you know what? None of you fuckers out there ever told me that any of this made sense. You always just read my introduction, probably didn't read the article, and just said, I don't give a fuck what he's talking about. It's not relevant to me. So I'll just mention that I have some thoughts about something else over here that's related to that. But yeah, as for what you wrote, I'm not going to say anything. Okay. Well, fuck me then, because I'm on a pretty shitty path to success on YouTube, okay? But I love you. I do. I love you all, my fellow humans, except for the liars. Don't love you yet, but I will. Okay, I think I better cut it there. I must thank you for your patronage, and see you next time.